Let's ask the audience another question and get your opinion here. So I think this looks similar to the earlier question, so we're wondering if you've changed your mind or had any other thoughts. And I don't have it here, so I have to squint, so don't look at me. What are the barriers that keep your organization from making an investment in training? Is it financial? Is it time? Is it a lack of knowledge where to start, or a lack of understanding on the return on investment? And so this tie between the investment in people and training and education and the return to a company may be a whole area we need to talk more about in the future. Now, moving from the financial a minute, although we know that healthcare is a business in our nation, but if we go to the core of healthcare, Reggie, and we talk about the patient or customer care issue, talk to us about what education and training has to do with that experience for all of us who come to the Cleveland Clinic, usually not at our best moment. And this is important to us.
Well, let's start with that. Coming to the Cleveland Clinic from your perspective, not at your best moment. So let me just try to draw a picture for you here. And you can answer this question for me in a way. At some point, all of us are going to end up in the hospital. By choice or not by choice, you want somebody taking care of you who knows what they're doing, who's well educated, who's focused, who's engaged. So I think the audience, without you even answering, I think that you would say yes. Training at the hospital and healthcare is vitally important. Now, after trying to draw that picture for you, I want to also talk about the importance of the multiple ways people learn. I think there's a couple of different ways. There's the 70-20-10 model, right? 70% of the people are experiential. They like the hands-on type of training. Then there's the 20% that like the coaching, and there's really only 10% that really goes through the formal training. So let's go with that 70% of the people who are experiential and you really wanting somebody to take care of you who really know what they're doing. And then let's also go back to what I said initially about Cleveland Clinic. The core of our business is taking care of people, helping people heal, and the fact that we're all caregivers. Everything we do at the Cleveland Clinic involves one person touching another. So it's critical for us to be a hands-on type of organization to deliver what we need to deliver. Now, the fact that we are hands-on and we are all caregivers, the fact that engagement is really, really important to us, it is no question that we invest heavily from a developmental standpoint. Now, to answer your question a little bit more specifically, a well-trained workforce clearly drives employee engagement. Employee engagement drives more focus, or even in some instances, a more engaged employee is a happier employee. I think you all will agree that we all go into our workplaces, we play a lot of different roles. Father, son, husband, wife, mother, daughter, coach of the football team. You bring all these things into work with you. So it behooves us in the healthcare industry to make sure, although we're all about patients, the employee experience is by far the most important first. And you get that by making sure they're well-trained, making sure they're well-developed, making sure that they are equitably paid. But from an education standpoint, these things are what fuels and drives the engagement for the employees, at least from our perspective. So by having a well-trained workforce, by having a well-developed workforce, it leads to greater focus, which for you, your loved ones, leads to better quality care, better quality outcomes, and an overall great patient experience. So for us, the hands-on training, the hands-on development, the fact that we're all caregivers, and knowing that everything we do involves someone touching another vitally makes education important for us.
I think it's interesting about what you're saying about the focused employee is the best employee, because when the employee sits down, in your case, and they're a healthcare provider, and they say to me, I want to tell you about my bad morning right before they're going to draw my blood, I'm not excited, right? and one of the things I say all the time is that education is a silver bullet. Mm-hmm. Some people say to me, there is no silver bullet. But I have lived my entire adult life, and everyone who knows me here will say this is authentically what I believe, that education is a silver bullet. And when I look at one of the #1 most critical issues that face every human being, it is our health. And what happens with those employees at the Cleveland Clinic and their engagement in education will completely change my personal experience and therefore my health and maybe my life. And so I think that just as my commentary to compliment the Cleveland Clinic for taking a very aggressive approach to trying to really engage the employees so that they can provide better care for us as citizens of this community.
Well, one other thing I do also want to say, I mean, I mentioned patient experience and servant leadership, but there's another thing about education. When you deliver it the right way, not only is it engaging the employee, but it builds confidence. You want a confident person working on you, right? So the empowerment through education and the engagement through education and building that confidence tremendously drives the outcome you're going to receive when you come to our hospital.
That's great. Now, I'm going to ask the panel, we only get to touch just the highlights, and we're hoping today really, remember, is a stimulator for you to learn more. Remember, what are you going to do for yourself in education? That this could be the answer. But I'm going to ask our panel now to think about, you all have a wealth of experience in doing what you do, and you've all been challenged by the barriers of selling, if you will, the power of education. Give our audience some advice on how they can go back in their community or in their organization or in their family and push education, but particularly in their organizations, their businesses. And so let's all give some feedback on that because you have such different perspectives.
Well, my perspective on that is there's a guy, he's actually here today. You know, he's always told me to have an opinion, have a perspective, and then be able to articulate it and show the value addedness of that. Each of you are in different roles, right? I mean, there's some HR people in here. I'm strictly an HR guy, but we often have to show the value addedness of what we are trying to get the organization to do. So a way to remove barriers is to be bold, have an opinion, have a perspective that you can articulate in a value-added way to the business leader. They don't get what we do, at least from this perspective of HR. They don't get talent management and why it's important. I need to explain and articulate that to them and how it ties to the education piece and how it's going to eventually tie to the clinical outcomes that's going to help drive things at the Cleveland Clinic. So be able to articulate that. The other thing that I would say as one other piece is make sure you're taking things to the table that may be a little bit outside the box, that are innovative and creative, because it may not make the difference today, but if you're thinking big picture, it's going to be those things that propel your organization tomorrow. Now, the Cleveland Clinic just invested in this talent management strategy. They've been doing talent management all along, but they didn't call it that. Now it's a more structured process because they see that it drives a competitive advantage. Well, we see that it drives competitive advantage. There's all kind of people that are trying to get our docs, right? There's trying to get our nurses. But now that we have a talent management process that is solely focused on not only the development, but the attraction, how we do our succession planning, it is really changing the game. Our new tagline is recruitment to retirement. We don't want people who are looking for a job, right? We want people who are looking for a career. And we are differentiating ourselves through education and development, but also demonstrating to the organization how that education and development impacts finance, marketing and communications, HR, IT, not just the docs and the nurses who clearly drive the revenue, but how it truly, truly impacts the entire organization. And they're getting it.
Beautifully said.
Beautiful.
Beautifully said.
The rest of you don't need to speak. Now, oh, just go ahead.